I don't think they will change because I don't think they have the capacity to, but they obviously should.
She said, congratulations on your career. And I said, congratulations on your career. And she said, well, it took a little turn.
John Oliver didn't just roast Meghan Markle. He straight up predicted her royal disaster years before it blew up. While the world was hypnotized by the so-called fairy tale wedding, sipping champagne and gushing over her dress, Oliver was out here sounding the alarm like a prophet with a mic.
I don't think you need to have just seen the pilot episode of The Crown to get a basic sense of she might be marrying into a family that could cause her some emotional complication.
He warned everyone that this wasn't going to be a love story, it was the setup for chaos. And guess what? He was right. This wasn't just some throwaway joke for late-night laughs, it was a chilling prophecy delivered with a smirk. He called the storm before Meghan even set foot on that royal aisle, saying exactly what the rest of the world would only realize years later. And now, every messy headline, every fallout, every feud looks like it came straight out of Oliver's script. So hit that like button right now if you don't want Harry and Meghan creeping up to aggressively tickle you in your sleep tonight. Because trust me, Oliver's words aged like fine wine, and the receipts are undeniable.
They're an emotionally stunted group of fundamentally flawed people doing a very silly pseudo job. That's what she's marrying into. So I hope she likes it. It's going to be weird for her.
Oliver's prediction wasn't just accurate, it was scary accurate. The kind of call that makes you wonder if he had a crystal ball tucked under that desk. We'll get to exactly what he said in a minute, but before that, you need to see how other comedians started catching on to the same thing. The warning signs weren't hidden in the shadows. They were flashing in neon if you knew where to look. Even people who had actually crossed paths with Meghan saw it coming. Billy Eichner, who knew her back in their Northwestern days, later reconnected when she was suddenly swimming in royal waters. And that conversation? It wasn't just friendly banter. It was Billy low-key clocking how fast her world had changed.
Prince Harry has entered the chat, you dumb ginger. You leave your title because you don't like your 94-year-old grandma? That's the definition of something you wait out, gangsta.
Yeah, they were very worried about their safety, which I get that aspect of things after 6 episodes. I wanted to attack them.
I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family! They're the original racists!
He wasn't being shady, but the subtext was loud and clear. Meghan's whole trajectory hit warp speed the second Harry entered the picture. It took a little turn, was Billy's polite way of saying her career didn't just level up. It exploded overnight, turning her from a struggling actress into a global celebrity wrapped in palace drama. And that's the exact transformation Oliver had already warned about. Not through raw talent, not through years of grinding in Hollywood, but through marriage. The comedy world wasn't blind for long. At first, they played along with the fairy tale fantasy, but eventually they saw the truth. This wasn't a love story, it was the ultimate career move wrapped up in a royal bow. Nikki Glaser didn't even bother sugarcoating it. She sliced straight to the point, saying exactly what so many people were whispering. Without Harry, Meghan would have been hustling for reality show spots, maybe even pouring lattes between auditions, not jetting around the world with a crown stamped on her brand.
Meghan and I are having a very casual conversation about who our acting teachers were, and she said, congratulations on your career, and I said, congratulations on your career. And she said, well, it took a little turn.
She didn't earn the platform, she married into it. And then, to make it more outrageous, she tried spinning this blatant power grab into some kind of feminist triumph. That's where the hypocrisy jumped out like flashing red lights. How can you claim to be the face of independence while literally trading that independence for a title and a palace address? It didn't add up, and the contradictions were impossible to ignore. Comedians saw it, audiences laughed at it, and as the royal drama cracked wide open, more and more people started connecting the same ugly dots. Comedians quickly realized Meghan had walked straight into a setup that was doomed from the start. With her personality, her expectations, and her obsession with control, there was no way this fairy tale was ever going to play out the way she imagined. And when John Mulaney weighed in, he didn't hold back one bit. He nailed the absurdity with brutal precision.
If she didn't marry him, she would be on The Bachelor this season. Fighting for Prince she would be Megan M. from Sherman Oaks barista. She's just got lucky.
Harry literally torched his entire life, tossed away his royal world, because his grandmother, who happened to be 94 years old, was too strict? Come on, that's not oppression, that's common sense. You don't blow up your crown, your country, and your family because of rules you already knew were part of the deal. To anyone watching from the outside, Harry's choices looked less like love and more like reckless self-sabotage. And Meghan, she thought she was locking into glitz, glamour, and red carpets forever. But comedians weren't fooled. They saw through the glossy image. They knew she wasn't stepping into Hollywood 2.0, she was walking into an ancient, rigid system that was always going to clash with her carefully staged brand of independence. That's the thing about the royal family. They're not edgy, they're not fun, they're not even remotely cool.
I said Meghan Markle is, of course, a lifelong feminist, which she's demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job.
They're a group of people dressed in expensive outfits, living by rules written centuries ago, and enforcing traditions older than most countries. So how in the world did Meghan not see this coming? The Queen being strict wasn't some random personality quirk, it was the entire system. The monarchy runs on formality, rules, and control. Yet Meghan somehow convinced herself she could step into the world's most rigid institution and magically flip it into a fun, modern playground built around her image. The clash was unavoidable. And then came Chris Rock, delivering the most savage reality check of them all. Meghan's public shock at discovering racism inside the royal family, Chris turned that into a punchline that stung with truth.
Prince Harry has entered the chat. You dumb ginger. You leave your title because you don't like your 94-year-old grandma? That's the definition of something you wait out, gangsta.
He basically said what everyone else was quietly thinking. How do you marry into the British monarchy and act blindsided by racial bias? This is the same institution that literally built an empire on colonization and slavery. Pretending to be surprised is like acting shocked that fire is hot or that water is wet. The comedy world wasn't buying the victim narrative or the carefully staged fairy tale act. They saw the cracks forming from day one. To them, this royal love story wasn't a dream. It was a ticking time bomb dressed in designer gowns. And the craziest part? John Oliver had already predicted it all with eerie precision.
You know it's weird, right? That Meghan and Harry left? Like, what? You thought rolling with those dorks in church clothes was gonna be fun?
But before we unpack his prophecy in full, let's break down how their dramatic royal exit became the comedy goldmine everyone saw coming. When Harry and Meghan finally bolted from the royal family, they sold it like a great escape, as if freedom would magically fix everything. But instead of peace, they ran headfirst into a bigger disaster that made them look even more ridiculous than before, and nothing exposed that better than South Park's brutal parody of Harry's endless book tour. That cartoon didn't even have to exaggerate, because the whining was already over the top. To most people, Harry's memoir sounded like hours of privileged complaints dressed up as tragedy. South Park turned that into comedy gold, ripping his victim complex wide open and proving just how transparent his act really was.
Queen of England was strict and not fun at all. So don't marry into the family with the most jive-ass boring people ever and then be like, oh, should we play Never Have I Ever?
But here's the part that drove everyone insane. Their constant claim that they just wanted to be normal people while doing the complete opposite. Every move they made screamed spotlight chasing. You can't go on global TV specials, Netflix deals, and endless interviews, then turn around and beg to be treated like average folks. The contradiction was so loud it became comedy in itself. And South Park didn't stop there. They went right for Meghan, exposing her desperate hunger for attention and the way she constantly centers herself in every story. It wasn't just satire. It was a mirror held up to the chaos they created, and audiences couldn't stop laughing at how painfully true it all looked. An Instagram-loving wife who screams about wanting privacy while posting her every move.
Gone on Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
That's the contradiction the whole world could see, even if Harry refused to admit it. Meghan was never trying to escape attention. She was trying to control it, to bend the spotlight so it always shined right on her. Their infamous line, "We want privacy," while actively chasing publicity became their unofficial catchphrase. A punchline comedians and even cartoons couldn't resist. South Park mocked it so effortlessly because the hypocrisy was too big to miss. Then came the Netflix documentary, hyped up as a raw, emotional story meant to win sympathy. But for most viewers, it did the exact opposite. Instead of empathy, it stirred annoyance.
What the f is she talking about? She didn't know. The fuck? It's the royal family. They're the original racists.
People went in expecting heartbreak, and they came out shaking their heads at the entitlement and non-stop victim routine. And don't even get started on their cringe couple behavior, the baby-voiced nicknames, the awkward love-dovey scenes. It had audiences ready to throw things at their TVs. Just hearing H and M was enough to make people physically squirm. It wasn't sweet, it wasn't romantic, it was nauseating proof of how self-absorbed they had become. Every scene exposed new contradictions, and by the end, it was impossible to ignore just how fake the fairy tale really looked. Even liberal comedians, the ones who normally bend over backwards to shield celebrities from harsh media attacks, started calling out Harry and Meghan's nonsense. Bill Maher, a man who has built his career defending controversial figures and poking holes in the establishment, finally threw up his hands and said, "Enough is enough."
We just want to be normal people. All this attention is so hard. Isn't it true, sir, that your questionable wife has her own TV show and hangs out with celebrities and does fashion magazines?
Maher nailed the core problem driving everyone absolutely insane. How can you complain about media intrusion while literally writing books, filming multi-million-dollar Netflix documentaries, and booking primetime interviews about how you supposedly don't want media attention? The logic collapses on itself. It's hypocrisy so obvious even their defenders couldn't spin it anymore. And here's the kicker. The complaints weren't coming from people struggling to survive. They were coming from two of the most privileged individuals on the planet, living in mansions, cutting luxury deals, and whining about how unfair the spotlight feels. When Bill Maher, the king of defending unpopular opinions, calls you ridiculous for complaining about privilege, you know you've lost the culture war. If even he couldn't stomach their entitlement.
What are you suggesting? Well, I just think some people might say that your Instagram-loving wife actually doesn't want her privacy. How dare you, sir? My Instagram-loving wife has always wanted her privacy!
What chance did they really have with the general public? The most frustrating part wasn't just their contradictions. It was how they demanded everyone play along as if it all made sense. They didn't only want sympathy, they wanted blind agreement with a narrative that was crumbling in real time. And if you dared to question it, you were immediately slapped with labels, mean, racist, or worse, just to shut down the criticism. Meanwhile, their endless money grabs exposed how fake their "we just want privacy" act really was. Harry's podcast hustle was the perfect example. As one parody put it, he had no discernible talent, just an endless stream of personal drama to cash in on. That puppet show nailed it. He was monetizing his family because he had nothing else to bring to the table. Even their choice of where to live screamed hypocrisy.
I watched the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary. Now, I'll be honest with you, before I watched it, I was not a fan of theirs. But now I've actually heard their side of the story, I f***ing hate them.
They wanted to be close enough to Oprah for cozy interviews, but just far enough from the paparazzi to pretend they were escaping. That's the game. They don't actually want the spotlight gone. They want it on their terms. And comedians, they pounced on it, pointing out the truths Harry seemed too blind or too stubborn to see. The whole act wasn't just transparent, it was laughable. And the louder they insisted on their victimhood, the funnier the contradictions became. Your grandmother is the Queen of England. How in the world is that a complicated conversation? The fact that Harry acted like explaining royal protocol was some impossible, life-shattering task shows just how out of touch he had become. And then came the most brutal reality check of them all. Comedians started openly questioning if this relationship was even real in the first place. That's the savage line nobody wanted to cross. But the question hung in the air. Would Meghan have given Harry a second glance if he wasn't fifth in line to the throne? The evidence, let's be honest, points to a big fat no. And that's when this saga moved from messy drama to pure insanity. Because here's the kicker. John Oliver wasn't just making random digs for laughs. He laid out a prediction so devastatingly accurate, it feels prophetic today. Long before the Netflix deals, before the tell-all interviews, before the royal exit turned into global chaos, Oliver already saw it coming.
They started off and they're making interesting points about racism and misogyny. Then they start calling each other H and M, and I just thought, oh, do f*** off.
He looked at Meghan, looked at the monarchy, and instantly knew she was walking into emotional landmines she wasn't remotely prepared for. And when you look back now, it's chilling. Oliver called it with eerie precision. Every scandal, every contradiction, every meltdown. He wasn't just roasting a duchess. He was mapping out a disaster years before it exploded. This wasn't comedy. It was prophecy. And Oliver didn't stop at a surface-level roast. He went deeper, cutting straight to the bone with a description of the royal family that now reads like a blueprint for everything that followed. He called them an emotionally stunted group of fundamentally flawed people doing a very silly pseudo-job. That wasn't just a joke. It was a psychological breakdown of an institution pretending to be relevant.
They're ridiculous after that. They want it both ways. You know, you can't be, these people were so mean to us, poor us, and we don't want all this attention, and then let me write a book about how much we don't want attention.
Oliver recognized instantly that for someone like Meghan, with her Hollywood ambitions and obsession with control, this family wasn't just a bad fit. It was poison. A lot of people say the fallout between Meghan, Harry, and the royals is because of the royals themselves, and in many ways, Oliver's words back that up. He probably hoped it could somehow work out, but he knew deep down it was a time bomb. The clash was inevitable. And yet, here's where it gets messy. Comedians like Trevor Noah have defended Meghan, pointing out the royals' history of racism. But siding with Meghan doesn't erase her contradictions either. She played the victim while living in luxury, manipulated situations to her advantage, and built a brand on constant hypocrisy. That's why so many people feel she can't be trusted. Still, the accuracy of Oliver's prediction is chilling. He saw through the pageantry, through the fairy tale headlines, and straight into the chaos years before it exploded. He didn't just tell a joke, he read the future.
You're complaining about your hard life, and you're so privileged. It's just so weird.
It's ridiculous. I totally agree.
While everyone else was buying fascinators and planning watch parties for the royal wedding, John Oliver was busy making one of the most accurate celebrity predictions in comedy history. The world was drowning in royal wedding fever, blinded by the glitter, the dress, and the endless fairy tale coverage. But Oliver wasn't fooled. He saw the psychological mismatch from day one, the kind of clash that was destined to implode no matter how much spin they put on it. This wasn't just comedy, it was a warning nobody wanted to hear. Comedians across the board spotted the cracks. Jimmy Carr roasted her contradictions. Chris Rock questioned how she could be shocked about the royals' history, and others mocked the hypocrisy baked into her narrative. The red flags were practically screaming, but Meghan walked straight into the fire. Was she too naive to realize it? Or too ambitious to care? She thought she could rewrite centuries of royal tradition, bend the monarchy into her Hollywood vision, and walk out a global icon. Instead, she found herself trapped in the exact cage Oliver warned about, proving his prophecy wasn't just sharp, it was devastatingly true. In the end, Meghan learned the hard way that some institutions are bigger than individual egos. Oliver's brutal description of the royals as emotionally stunted and fundamentally flawed turned out to be chillingly accurate. Meghan couldn't handle their dysfunction, and they couldn't handle her endless appetite for attention. It was the ultimate collision, two broken systems crashing into each other. Their saga proves exactly what happens when you ignore expert analysis because it doesn't fit the fantasy you're desperate to believe. And ironically, it was a comedian, not a royal insider, who read the situation better than anyone. Sometimes, comedy is the sharpest truth teller we have about human behavior. Oliver's prediction was more than a roast. It was a masterclass in understanding human nature. He knew dropping Meghan into the monarchy was like mixing oil and water, a disaster waiting to explode. So here's the real question. Should we start taking comedians' predictions more seriously? Or will celebrities keep marching into disasters everyone else can already see coming? Drop your take in the comments, smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive stories just like this one.